無常人人未妙法。百千万語難遭遇。我今見聞直十字。願下如来真実義。無常人人微妙法。百千万語難遭遇。我今見聞直十字。願下如来真実義。無常人妙法。百千万語難遭遇。我今見聞直十字。願下如来真実義。
So today will be the last part of my talk on Dogen Zenji's very last chapter in the Shobogenzo, Hachi-dainingaku in Japanese, 8 awarenesses of a true adult person. Last time I talked about practicing wisdom, which is number 7. And interestingly, there's number 8, although usually Buddhism, the goal is attaining wisdom. So what would come after the attainment of wisdom? The answer is stopping idle talk, idle discussion. The Indian word is papancha, Japanese kelon, discussion, idle talk. Dogen Zenji starts with saying number 8 is refraining from idle talk. Prove it. The character here in Japanese is Sho, which is a character that Dogen Zenji also uses when he wants to express Satori. For him, Satori is proof, and it is our practice, which is a proof of Satori. In Japanese, Shusho, Itto, practice, Shu, and Satori, Sho, are one. You cannot separate them. So you have to prove it without differentiation, distinction, without making distinctions. That's called fukelon. That's called refraining from idle talk. You have to invest the true form. The true form of what? Mizuno Yaoko, in her commentary, in a footnote, says, true form means the true form of the self, which is also the true form of the 10,000 things. So basically, it's reality as it is, right in front of your eyes. You have to see reality as it is. That means to stop idle talk. In a month or so, when it gets warmer and Samu outside starts, and at 10 o'clock in the morning you have the Samu break, then probably people will return to the Soto Shokudo to have a cup of tea and maybe a cookie that was cooked by the Tenzo. And then often people sit outside under the big tree and enjoy a little talk with each other. And in my view, it's less the Japanese, but especially maybe the Germans that then, although they just worked until 10 o'clock and now they have their 15-minute, 20-minute break, start discussions like, what is Zazen really about? What's the real meaning of Satori? what did Uchiyama Roshi mean when he said this and this? Or Sawaki, or what Muho said in his last video, whatever. I read in the Shobogenzo that, what do you think about this? And in a way, it's not a bad thing to have your mind focused on the Dharma, even during the tea break, even during the Samu break. It's not a bad thing. But here, Dogen Zenji says, and that's the last point. In a way, you could say it's the most important point. Stop discussing. So that comes even after wisdom. Even after you have attained wisdom, stop talking about it. Stop thinking about it. The problem with that is during these 15, 20 minutes sitting under the tree with your cup of tea and discussing with others, do you really taste the tea? Do you really taste the cookies that the Tenzo prepared for you? Do you see the mountains that every day turn into a different shade of green? Right now they're still brown with white spots from the remaining snow of the winter. Some of them turned brown snow. But then in a couple of weeks, you have the first really fresh, pale green leaves, and they turn more green with each week. But that's something that you only see when you stop discussing. When you discuss the meaning of the Genjo Koan while you sit there with your cup of tea under the tree, you will never see the green of the mountains. Dogen Zenji says that practice and enlightenment are one. And you could discuss for hours and hours what the real meaning of that is. But you only attain the meaning when you let go of the thought about practice in enlightenment and, how do you say, leave yourself to the practice, become one with the practice. Like the famous saying, when you drink your tea, drink the tea, and after that, wash your cup. When you wash the dishes, you just wash the dishes. Don't think about the Buddha Dharma when you wash the dishes. Basically, I think that's what he means here with stopping idle talk. Do what needs to be done. Become one with the reality in front of your eyes. And after this, the quote from the Yuikyo-gyo, the last teaching of the Buddha, starts. The Buddha said, "You practitioners, if you discuss all kinds of things, your mind will be shattered. You will be not really here in the so-called here and now. You won't see the green of the mountains in front of you. You don't taste the tea while you talk about being one or stuff like that. Even though you have left home, you haven't attained a liberation yet." In Japanese, the word here is tokudatsu, which also I think refers to the letting body and mind drop, but also it means the attainment of nirvana. And there's a part in the beginning of the Fukanza Zengi. At first, Dogen Zenji says things like, the way is everywhere. How do you think you can attain it? And then a couple of sentences later, he says, if there's only the slightest separation, it's so far from you like heaven is from earth. If there's even the slightest separation. And basically there he's talking about papancha, idle talk, distinguishing things intellectually. And after that, Dogen Zenji says, even if you understand the whole Buddha Dharma, you've studied all the sutras, and you even had a couple of enlightenment experiences, even then, it's like your head is stuck in the entranceway and your body still hasn't found the way out. And here he's saying the same thing in different ways, or here it's the Buddha who's talking. Even if you have left home, if you haven't stopped papancha, idle talk, intellectual differentiation, if you don't stop that, you will never get free. Your body will not get free. Even during Zazen, you will only think about what is the meaning of Zazen. You won't become one with Zazen. During Samu, you ask yourself, what's the meaning of Samu? Is Samu really also an expression of Zen practice? And how? How do I have to do Samu so that it becomes an expression of Zen practice? As long as you think about that, you and Samu will be separate. You won't attain freedom in Samu. And freedom in Samu, just like freedom in Zazen, happens the moment when Zazen does Zazen. The dishes wash the dishes. Samu does Samu. There's no separation anymore. And it's papancha, idle talk, that keeps us separated. And the quote from the last sermon of the sutra continues. If you want to attain nirvana, peace, all you need to do is stop idle talk, refrain from idle talk. That's what is meant by Fukelon, stopping idle talk. Okay, so much for the moment in English. I will continue a little bit in Japanese. So Dogen Zenji quoted the last of the 8 awarenesses of a true adult being. And here starts the part of this chapter where Dogen Zenji is using his own words. Often, especially in the early chapters of the Shobogenzo, Dogen Zenji is using very creative, original ways to express himself. Sometimes he seems to even deny the words of the ancestors. But here he's using nothing but praise for what he quoted. He says, so these are the 8 awarenesses of a true adult person. In each single one of these 8, all of the other 8 are contained. So the first one was small desires. And the second one, knowing that you have enough, is already contained in the first one. Knowing that you have enough also contains small desire. And they all contain number 8, which means to stop idle talk. And number 8, stopping idle talk, contains all 8. So each of the 8 contains 8, and that makes 64. And Dogen Zenji says you can continue, and then it becomes, well, you can continue until eternity. Actually, the number is infinite. So if you have 64, then you could also say each of these 64 contains 64. And that would make, I don't know, close to 4,000. And then you could multiply 4,000 with 4,000, and then you have 16 million, and so forth. But that would be really idle talk, idle calculation. So Dogen Zenji says you could continue until infinity, but for the time being, let's say it's 64. And of course, you could also say for the time being, let's say it's 8. 8 is already a big enough number. But, well, in the 24 hours of the day, these 8 appear in many forms. So we could say it's 64, we could say it's infinite. Anyway, our great master Shakyamuni gave this as his last sermon. It was on the 15th day of the second month during the night. And after this, he didn't preach anymore, but reached pari-nirvana. Probably everybody has heard the word nirvana. What is pari-nirvana? Simply said, nirvana can be attained in this life, or not only can it be attained in this life, it must be attained in this life. Only a living being, usually a human being, can attain nirvana. In the case of the Buddha, that was when he was 36 and he saw the morning star below the Bodhi tree. So when did the Buddha attain pari-nirvana? When he was 80 and died. That's when he attained pari-nirvana. What's the difference? Nirvana means freedom from suffering. But even the Buddha, when he attained nirvana at age 36, he was still hungry. He would still experience pain. There was still, especially on the biological level, there was pain and suffering. He didn't cling to that anymore. He was free from that suffering in the sense that he completely accepted this suffering. So in that sense, he was in nirvana, but only after he died. Also, this biological suffering, the pain that he feels when a mosquito bites him, disappears because he's dead. And in the case of the Buddha, he's not born again a second time. In the case of Mahayana Buddhism, that's not our goal, but rather we wish, as Dogen Zenji expressed in the Hotsubo Daishin chapter, Arousing Bodhi Mind, here Dogen Zenji expresses the wish to be reborn again and again. As long as there's a single being that is suffering, I want to return and suffer with this being and show this being the way out of suffering. Anyway, in the case of the Buddha 2,500 years ago, on February 15th, in the night, he stopped preaching, died, and attained pari-nirvana. And for a last time, Dogen Zenji quotes a part of this sutra. In Antai, also we usually chant it in February on the Nirvana day, February 15th. And if you have chanted the sutra, you probably know it's quite long. It takes almost an hour or so. And the 8 awarenesses of a true adult being are only a part of the sutra. It comes in the second half. And during the sutra, a couple of times, one of the students of the Buddha stands up and addresses the audience, the other listeners. If you have any questions, now would be the time to ask, because our teacher isn't well, he might die any minute. If you have any doubts about the teaching, ask now, ask now. During the sutra, repeatedly, you have this kind of exchange. And finally, after repeating these questions 3 times, none of the students had any more questions. And then the Buddha is, how do you say, feels at peace. He's assured that his students understood his teaching. And he says, finally, you should always focus on finding the way out. And with way out here, the exit out of samsara is meant, the way out of suffering. And the way out, of course, is also a way in. That's kind of the Zen realization. Maybe you go to Antaiji because you were looking for a way out of the world, out of your problems, out of suffering. But as long as you look for a way out of samsara, you will never find it. Nirvana lies in the realization that it's actually a way into samsara. Nirvana you find when you enter the rice field, you enter the kitchen as the tenzo, you enter the zazendo and become one with the sitting. The way out of samsara is also a way into samsara. The exit and the entrance are one. But that's something that I said. You don't find it in the text here. What the Buddha says is you should always focus your mind on finding the exit. Everything in the world, things movable as well as things unmovable, they are all impermanent. They will all vanish and disappear. And that, of course, is true for ourselves, for this very physical bodily existence, and also for our minds. We will disappear. You practitioners should stop now. What he means here is don't ask any more questions. Until 5 minutes ago or so, the Buddha was still accepting questions. But now, please stop. Please be silent. Don't say anything more. My time has passed. I will die now. This is going to be my last sermon. And that's where the sutra ends. And Dogen Zenji says a couple of other things. Let me read the end of the chapter. Therefore, all disciples, all students of the Buddha should, without exception, read this teaching. You should study it, practice it. If you don't do so, if you don't study this, you cannot call yourself a student of the Buddha. This is in Japanese, Shobogenzo Nehan Myoshin, the storage of the I, of the true Dharma. And this is also the title of this book, the Shobogenzo. But of course, here, Dogen Zenji doesn't refer to the title of his book, but he's referring to the whole of the teaching of the Buddha. And it is said that the Buddha transmitted the storage of the I, of the true Dharma. Nehan Myoshin means the ungraspable mind of nirvana. He transmitted that to his disciple Mahakashapa one day when he gave a sermon. But rather than speaking, he just lifted up a flower. And all of the other students probably looked surprised. What does he mean by that? What's the meaning of this flower? What does Shakyamuni try to communicate to us? And only Mahakashapa smiled. And it is said that Shakyamuni then said, to you, today I transmitted the storage of the true Dharma I and the wondrous mind of nirvana. All of the other students obviously were still trapped in papancha, idle thinking. What's the meaning of that? They didn't even see the flower. They didn't see the teacher. They were only looking for some meaning behind this gesture. And only Mahakashapa saw the teacher. He saw the flower. He was the only one who was awake in that moment. And here Dogen Zenji says the same storage of the true Dharma I, the same wondrous minds of nirvana is also transmitted in these 8 awarenesses. So you should know them. You should practice them. But unfortunately, today there are many who don't know them. Many who have never heard or seen them. I don't know if Dogen Zenji literally means that many students at the time in Japan had never heard about the sutra, but I doubt that. I rather have the feeling that Dogen Zenji felt the need to quote this teaching at length in his very last chapter of the Shobogenzo was that probably all of his students had heard about this sutra, but they thought, well, this is kind of like ABC for small children. Small desires, knowing that you have enough, looking for a quiet place, and then in the end, no idle talk. We know about that. That's kind of ABC for kind of elementary school for Buddhist disciples. We want to learn more about the difference of, say, koan training and shikantasa practice. We want to know about, I don't know, differences in Mahayana teaching and Theravada teaching. We want to know the details of Yogacara teaching and how it relates to the teaching of emptiness as it was taught by Nagarjuna, for example. I could imagine that many of Dogen's students already thought that they were way beyond these 8 simple practices. And I think that Dogen Zenji wrote this chapter especially for them. Have you really read this sutra? Have you really seen the Buddha here? Have you really heard the Buddha? Are you really practicing this? Or are you still trapped in papancha, in idle talk? When you sit under the tree in front of the Soto Shokudo in Antaiji and you discuss the true meaning of shikantasa and you don't even see the green mountains in front of you. So it's hard for me to imagine that people at the time of Dogen Zenji didn't actually know this sutra, or maybe, I don't know. But I rather have the impression they already knew it. They thought they had understood it, but because of that, they got stuck with their mind in the theory and didn't find the physical way of liberation. So Dogen Zenji here says the reason why almost nobody has seen or heard about this sutra today is because we're all kind of like tools of the devil. The devil is playing with us. And the devil here, in my mind, means theoretical thinking, distinction. It's the devil in our mind. We always look for nirvana on the other side. We are still looking for some Satori experience, one really big one in the future. Why is that? Dogen Zenji here says it's because of our karma from previous lives. Because of our bad karma, we have never heard or listened to this sutra. In the time of the true Dharma, and what is a Soho in English? In Buddhism, there's the teaching that there's 3 periods of the Dharma after a Buddha appears in this world. The first 500 or 1,000 years are true Dharma. And during this time, it's pretty easy to get into contact with the Dharma, listen to the Dharma, practice the Dharma, and realize, awaken to the Dharma. That's the case during the first 500 or 1,000 years. And then there's the Soho means kind of like a reflected Dharma, like a copied Dharma. It's almost as good as the original. The copy is almost as good as the original, but it's not the original. People are still practicing the Dharma. They're still having their Kensho or Satori experiences, but it's not the real deal anymore. And that period also lasts for 500 years or 1,000 years. And after that comes the end Dharma, the last Dharma. And at the time of Dogen Zenji, it was only 1,500 years or so after the Buddha died, but people thought now is the time that the end Dharma has started. It's impossible for us to really practice like the old masters. It's impossible for us to attain really true awakening. All we can hope is that Amitabha Buddha will help us, or that the power of the Lotus Sutra will help us. And that's what people like Honen or Shinran or Nichiren taught in Japan. The last Dharma has started. You can never find liberation if you practice Zazen like the Buddha did. Why? Because we don't live in the time of the true Dharma anymore. And usually Dogen Zenji denies this. He says if you sit on the cushion, that's when the true Dharma starts. The moment you encounter the Buddha Dharma and you practice it, that's true Dharma. And even if you lived in the time of the Buddha, but never encountered the Dharma, or you heard it, but you never practiced it, then you're living in end Dharma. You're not living in the time of true Dharma. But here he seems to more or less follow the usual way these terms are used in Buddhism. That means true Dharma and the copied Dharma are times of the past. Today we're living in the time of end Dharma. And Dogen Zenji says that's the reason why so few people have heard about this teaching. If it was the time of the true Dharma or the copied Dharma, all of the Buddhist disciples knew this teaching. They studied it and they practiced it. But now, today, among 1,000 monks, there's only 1 or 2 who know the teaching of the 8 awarenesses of a true adult person. And again, I think that probably even at the time of Dogen, most people intellectually knew this teaching. It's just that they didn't practice it. So in that sense, they lived in the end Dharma. And you could say, I would say that if you belong to the 1 or 2 who not only know the teaching intellectually, but also you practice it, then you're living in the true Dharma, even though it's 2,500 years since the Buddha died. Anyway, Dogen Zenji says, how pitiful at this end time in a barbarian country, or these barbarians. There's no metaphor, there are no words for them. But at the end, Dogen Zenji offers also a few words of hope. He says, the true Dharma of the Tathagata has spread all over the world. In the whole universe today, you can find the Dharma of the Tathagata. The pure teaching has not disappeared yet. So now, before it disappears, you should use your time to learn it and practice it. Don't be lazy. Don't be lazy. It's extremely difficult to meet the teaching of the Buddha, even in endless times. It's also difficult to be born as a human being. Sometimes they use this metaphor of a piece of wood with a small hole in it, and it's floating somewhere on the Pacific Ocean. only one of these pieces of wood. And there's a single turtle living in the Pacific Ocean. And only, I don't know, a couple of 100 years or so, the turtle swims up to the surface to take a breath or so. How big is the chance that at that point the turtle will pop its head up exactly through the hole of this piece of wood that is floating on the ocean? And the answer is, of course, it's close to zero. The probability that the turtle will pop its head exactly through that hole is basically zero. And that's a metaphor for the likelihood to be born into this world as a human being and at a time and place where you can actually study and learn the Buddha Dharma. But that miraculously has happened to us. It's good to be born as a human being on the 3 continents. This is referring obviously to the old Indian cosmology that at the center of the world there is Mount Sumeru. And on all 4 sides, north, east, south, west, there's a continent. I could imagine that the Indians used Sumeru as a metaphor for the Himalaya. And they were living in the south of the Himalaya. That's the continent they knew best. But they also had an idea that there were also people living there in China in the east and in Arabia and Europe in the west. But there was not much of a contact. And they knew almost nothing about what happened on the north side. So they said, thanks God that we're born here, where it's possible to get into contact with the Buddha teaching. Today, you can also get into contact with it in China or Japan, or even in Europe, in America. But at the time, India in the south was best. How about the north? In the north, there's Siberia, and it's a hard place to live, especially at the time of the Buddha, 2,500 years ago. Could imagine it was a hard place to live there. But the Indians obviously had the idea, according to the what Mizuno Yauko-san writes here in the Japanese version, that the North continent is one without suffering. It's almost like heaven. If you're born there, you're born in heaven. But especially because of that, because there's no suffering on the north side of the Himalaya, there's no Buddha teaching there. Buddha started with the realization life is unsatisfactory. If you're born in a world, in a culture where all of your needs are taken care of and you're never unsatisfied, there's no opportunity for you to study the Dharma. So thank God, thank Buddha that we're born here in this world where there's suffering, but we also had the opportunity to meet and practice the Buddha Dharma. Basically, that's what he's saying here. It's good to be born on the 3 planets. It's especially good to be born on the southern one. And I could imagine that originally it referred to India, but today we say it's the human world. It's good that we were born into this human world because we can see the Buddha here. We can listen to the Dharma. We have the opportunity to leave home and find our way in this world. And that's why this world is the best. If we had been born before the Buddha Dharma was born and attained nirvana, and if we had died before the Buddha taught, there would have been no way for us to encounter this teaching. We couldn't have studied it and practiced it. But now, in this life, we are able to read it, to hear it, to practice it. That's because of our good previous karma. We must have done something very good in previous lives to be blessed with this existence, to be blessed by the chance to come to Antaiji and practice there. So let us study it now and practice it in this life and the next. Always aiming for Anuttara Samyaku Sambodhi, for the greatest uncomparable wisdom of the Buddha. And if we are able to preach it to other living beings, then there's nothing that would differentiate us from Shakyamuni himself. If we are able to study, learn, practice this in this lives and previous lives and teach it to others, we are one with Shakyamuni. Okay, so much from my side for the time being. If you have questions, you're welcome to ask.
無常無変誓願の煩悩無尽誓願難訪問無用誓願学仏道無常誓願上衆生無変誓願道煩悩無尽誓願難訪問無用誓願学仏道無常誓願上衆生無変誓願道煩悩無尽誓願難訪問無用誓願学仏道無常誓願上